خالفتم أقوال الشيوخ فأنتم.
But even with the disciples fleeing, and I have to read specifically where they mention who was there. Even in that account, like for example, the beginning of the Gospel of Luke, the writer talks about how he compiled narratives from people that he's heard, right? So even if in the case that there were the apostles, I'm going to grant it to you that
That
not many
doesn't say
apostles
from
were
people
at the
that.
moment of crucifixion.
Wait,
What'd you say?
it doesn't say from people that he's heard. It doesn't say that.
Luke 1.
Yeah.
Says
Says
here.
Yeah.
It says, just as many have undertaken to compile a narrative about the events that have been fulfilled among us, just as the original eyewitness and servants of the word handed them down to us.
Yeah,
so it also seems that
handed them down.
Investigated everything right to you, right?
Yeah, so handed them down doesn't mean direct transmission. For example, you as a Christian today, you could say, I'm a Christian and I believe in the faith that's been handed down to me by the apostles. It doesn't mean that you are directly receiving or transmitting anything from the apostles. We see an example of this from First Clement, okay, where Clement says the same thing. What's been handed down to us. It doesn't mean that there is a direct transmission there. So I just in case that you were going to make that point, I just want to make it clear.
And that's the point I am making. You're right. It doesn't necessitate, but I'll just go with the idea that based on the evidence we have or the information we have of the Apostle Luke, that the evidence that he would have would be directly transmitted because he was based on the book of Acts, the writing of Acts. Luke was someone who was known among the group of the apostles and who would have received information there. So and that's one example of someone who I would say got direct information. And then you have the other disciples who would have gotten direct information from Jesus or from the disciples that were with him, with Matthew, Mark, and John. And then they would have written down what they've seen. So that's why I can go to the accounts and say,
one sec, let me just make a quick point here. If that's the case, if Luke is receiving direct transmission, then why does Luke contradict Matthew's nativity?
I don't believe Luke contradicts his nativity.
Of course he does. Luke has Jesus born after 6 AD, after Judea becomes a province of the Roman Empire, and during the Quirinius, or during the census of while Quirinius was governor of Syria. Matthew has Jesus born in the lifetime of King Herod the Great, which is 10 years earlier. And that's not only that, they have a different lineage for Christ, and they have Christ being from two completely different towns. So in Matthew, Jesus is already from Bethlehem. Okay, he's already from Bethlehem. Okay, that's his hometown. He goes to Egypt because of King Herod. Then when he comes back, and Archelaus, the son of King Herod, is now controlling that area, they're afraid that he's going to be just as bad as his father. Then so they go and they move to Nazareth as their new hometown. In Luke, Jesus is already from Nazareth. So Nazareth, he doesn't move there later. He's already from Nazareth. Then he goes to Bethlehem. Why? Because there's a census, Roman Empire-wide census, and they have to go back to the 1,000-year-old ancestry land, and Joseph's from the line of David, so they have to go back to Bethlehem. And while they're there registering for the census, Mary gives birth to him. And then after that, after 30 days, they go to Jerusalem for the rituals of the newborn. And then they go back to their home in Nazareth. So you have 3 contradictions just within the birth narratives. How would you explain that?
In response to the first one you brought up, could you give your source as to that Herod came? You said Herod died 10 years earlier.
Yeah, that's what we know from Josephus.
That the Herod mentioned in Matthew died 10 years earlier.
Yeah, we know that from Josephus. King Herod died in the year 4 AD.
Okay, let me see this really quickly. Because it is the case that Luke talks about 2 different Herods as well. And that might be
I'm talking about Herod. I'm talking about Herod.
I would have to get the specific.
Hey, brother, listen. I'm talking about Herod the Great. How we know that is because after Herod dies, because they flew to Egypt scared from Herod, it mentions his son Herod Archelaus taking over. So we know which Herod. It's the father of Archelaus. And the father of Archelaus is King Herod the Great. You understand? So Matthew has Jesus born during the time of King Herod. That's a 10-year difference. Luke cannot be transmitting information from anybody who knew Jesus. It's impossible. There's too many historical discrepancies there. And he's also copying and using Mark as his source and Q as his source.
Honestly, I wouldn't say necessarily, because I'm looking at the text right now. I'm in Luke, and looking at Luke, it just mentions, for example, Quirinius, Caesar Augustus, and you're saying that these individuals came before Herod. That's what you're saying? Just so I get you right.
No, I'm saying Quirinius, the census, when Quirinius became governor of Syria, that happens in the year 6 after Common Era. So Herod dies in 4, and then Quirinius becomes governor of 6 AD. That's a 10-year difference. And that's not the only issue. You have the contradiction with the lineage, where Jesus has 2 different grandfathers, and you have Jesus being you have Jesus going to Egypt in Matthew, and that's impossible in Luke's account, because Herod in Luke's account is already dead. and in Matthew, his hometown is Bethlehem. In Luke, his hometown is not Bethlehem, it's Nazareth.
All right, just with the one you mentioned about Herod, because the thing is, it says that they went to Egypt to avoid Herod dying, and then in Luke it says that this census happened before Jesus was born. So I would just say then, if that's the case, you're saying, because I'm trying to because I'm not used to this contradiction here. So you're saying that Quirinius coming into play as the governor happened after Herod died?
10 years after.
10 years after?
Yeah.
Could you give me the source for that?
Josephus, and we also have Tacitus speaks about it as well.
Cool.
Just do a simple Google search, will come up.
Yeah, I'm not so sure with an answer for this one, but what I have heard, because I've watched snippets of stuff regarding mentioning this, I've heard there that we could say that I believe Josephus's accounts would be wrong. We wouldn't necessarily say that he was 100% correct.
And whose account is right then?
They would say Luke.
Yeah, but what?
Him being the earliest source.
Yeah, but what's Luke right about? What's Josephus wrong about and Luke right about?
Just the dating, because the where Luke places in the story would be correct, and then Josephus would have it wrong.
Luke doesn't give a dating. Only Josephus.
Yeah, he doesn't give a date, but the place he puts it within the narrative would be where we can attach it to, right?
Yeah,
before Christ was born.
And he puts that in what timeline?
That would be the years prior to Christ being born. So the few years before that.
That's fine, but how does that contradict Josephus?
Because you're saying that Josephus states that Quirinius became governor after Herod died, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm just saying that if Josephus is wrong on that issue, then we could just easily say that Quirinius was there while Herod was alive, and then he would have done that. And that's what I'm saying. I would want to go and read up on what the scholars or apologists have written on this to see.
Yeah, right? So the issue here is going to be this. Okay, the issue here is, how do you know when Herod died?
Like the specific date?
Yeah.
I mean, the best place I would be able to go would be, extra biblical sources, but within the Bible, I wouldn't know.
It's gonna be Josephus. So
cool.
You're depending on Josephus, and then you're not depending on Josephus. It's impossible, because all the corroboration we have is that Judea didn't become a Roman province until the year 6 anyway. There couldn't have been a Roman census before the year 6. So whether Archelaus, whether Herod, whether anybody, we know that this is impossible with Luke's timeline.
Yeah, I'll just say I'm not too sure on this, but I'll just keep saying what I said, which is that I can take Josephus at points and not taking my points. He's not like that
What's
to
the
me.
justification
So
for
if I
that?
say that he's wrong on this issue, that could easily be reconciled with my view.
What's the justification for that?
I would say that Luke's just the earlier witness in terms of when he's written his book, written his writings.
Yeah, that's fine.
Closer
But
to the time when it's written, Luke would have more sources. Luke would have
yeah,
a good
but
amount of sources that he can use to back what he's saying.
Yeah, again, let's just clarify. Luke is an earlier and a better source for what? For which detail?
The information regarding when Quirinius was doing his
But
work.
he doesn't tell us.
Time.
He doesn't tell us when Quirinius became governor.
But he gives us the time. What I'm saying is he gives us the time frame that Quirinius is doing his work as governor, right?
Yeah,
which would be before Christ was born.
Yeah. So Luke tells us that in the time of Herod, okay? So he starts his gospel in the time of Herod. And then he has Jesus born in the time of Quirinius. So are you saying that Luke places the governorship of Quirinius in the time of King Herod?
Yeah, if we're going with Matthew, then that would be the case.
And that would be impossible because King Herod couldn't have been the authority over Judea because Judea became a Roman province in 6 AD.
And what?
And that's
your,
you understand?
Oh, finish.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying.
Could you give the source for that claim you make there? That you said it only became a
we know it from Tacitus and from Josephus.
All right, I need to read those sources there.
Yeah, so if you're gonna keep denying all these facts because they're contingent upon one another, you're just gonna have to deny everything we know about first century Jerusalem and Judea. Okay, because we get that information from Josephus and people like sometimes Tacitus and.
I believe we also get a good amount of information regarding like first century Judea from the scriptures themselves, and I would say that Josephus or Tacitus could error in respects to that. Like, for example, I believe there are examples where they said interpolation. Whatever the case may be, it's just the fact that Josephus and Tacitus can err in terms of
that's not how it works. You need corroboration for that, and there's no corroboration for that. We have corroboration for what Josephus says or Tacitus say, but we don't have any corroboration for that. So you could study up on that. That's not a big problem, but you also have two other issues. Is that Jesus is from Bethlehem, is his hometown in Matthew, and that's not the case in Luke. So how is that the case?
What verses are you citing specifically for this? Because I
not a specific verse. It's just a nativity account. So Matthew
and Luke say that Jesus was born in Bethlehem. So
but how did he get to Bethlehem in Luke? Why does he go to Bethlehem?
It says here that Joseph went up from his town of Nazareth to
Bethlehem,
of David.
To register for the census, right?
Cool. And it says there that Jesus was born there as well.
Right. The only reason that they're there is to register for a census. They're not from there, correct?
Yes. Well, Jesus was born there, but Joseph wasn't from there. Yeah.
No, they're not from there. They go to register.
I'm saying Jesus was born there, but Joseph wasn't from there, right?
Yeah, they're not from there. Jesus just happens to be born there because they were there for a census, right?
So what do you mean by they're not from there? Like, is that if he's born there,
they didn't live there. They just went there.
To do something. They didn't stay there for a long time.
And then Jesus was born in Bethlehem because they were there to register for a census, right?
Right, and they registered with the census, born in Bethlehem, and then they lived in Nazareth. Right. Okay.
Good. Now, in Matthew, Jesus is already from Bethlehem, and Matthew and Elizabeth and Mary and Joseph already from there, and the angel appears to them there, and she gives birth there, and then she goes to Egypt and flees. Okay, so she's already situated in Bethlehem. They're situated in Bethlehem. They're not just visiting there for a census.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And why do they end up going to Nazareth?
Because let me see here.
in Matthew.
Matthew, it says Matthew 2. When you hear that, it says here that he Joseph was told by an angel that to go, he can return, so he just withdrew to the region of Galilee.
To
and he settled in
return,
a town called Nazareth.
right? Why? Because he was afraid of the new king now, Archelaus. So he couldn't go back to his hometown, and instead they decided to move to Nazareth.
Right.
So they moved to Nazareth as a new hometown. In Luke,
Yes.
Jesus is already from Nazareth. They're already from there, and he just goes to Bethlehem because of a census, and they're born, and he's born there.
Let me see. I don't see how that would honestly be a contradiction, though, because remember.
So is he originally? So that's the question. Is he from Nazareth, or did he move to Nazareth?
Because it says here that he appeared to Mary in Nazareth, and then if I
that's
go to
in Luke.
2, Joseph also went up from the town into Judea, right? And then it says here he went. Yeah, I don't see an issue here because
so is he
I
from
can easily
Nazareth?
say that they were like Nazareth is a place that they were at when the angel met them. It doesn't.
Is he from Nazareth?
So much depth into that.
Hey, brother, is he from Nazareth originally? His parents, or did they end up moving there because they were scared of the new king?
I think it can be both. That they were from Nazareth,
both
went to Bethlehem. Yeah, like from Nazareth, went to Bethlehem for the census, went to Egypt because
so
they
where was their house? Where were they situated? In Bethlehem or in Nazareth?
They would have been in Nazareth, right? Remember, because
in Matthew, they only go to Nazareth as a new place. They're not from there.
Right,
they go there because they're scared of going back home.
Right. It doesn't. Wait, you said Matthew says they're scared of going back home.
Yeah.
But he was afraid to go there. Doesn't say anything about scared of going back home. Just scared of going back to Bethlehem. And what I'm saying is that
why is he going? Wait. Why is he going back to? Why is he going back to Bethlehem if he's not from there?
Could have easily been because his son Christ would have been born there, so they would have wanted to stay there.
So what? If me and my wife are from Toronto, Canada, and me and my wife have Me and my wife, we have a wedding to attend to in Los Angeles, and my wife gives birth in Los Angeles.
Right.
My home is back in Toronto, Canada. So when I return to Toronto, because I'm returning home, okay. So why is Joseph returning to Bethlehem if Bethlehem was not home to begin with? He was just there traveling.
See here is good to go there.
Because Matthew and Luke are in contradiction. That's why.
No, I don't see so, because I still don't see an issue with them being born now, them living Nazareth, going to Bethlehem. Christ is born in Bethlehem, going to Egypt to escape Herod, wanting to come back to Bethlehem to stay where Christ is born.
No, Christ is with him in Egypt. What do you mean go back?
Right.
To stay
I didn't say he isn't, but they would all go back to Bethlehem.
For what? If their home is in Nazareth,
I don't need to give a specific reason for it. I could say that's easily how it could happen.
Dude, if their home is in Nazareth, what are they returning to Bethlehem for?
Could be because Christ was born there. I don't need to give a reason for that. That's just how it went.
What do you mean could be?
You understand that
what do they have there?
Okay,
they registered
people
for the
could do as they wish. That could easily happen.
You're just drawing accounts that don't make sense now. Why? Because you're trying to reconcile the text when they can't be reconciled, and you're positing something implausible. You could reconcile it as much as I could say Jesus went to the moon. When did he go? Well, actually, right before he was crucified, he went to the moon and he came back. There's no problem.
But
it's reconciled.
You can't. But even with what you just said there, you can't get any sort of sufficient substance for that from the text, right? What I'm saying is that it could easily be stated that they started in Nazareth, went to Bethlehem for the census, went to Egypt to escape Herod, and went back to Nazareth,
All right.
Joseph thinking of going to Bethlehem. That's possible, right?
Yeah. For what? Can you give me a plausible explanation for why Joseph is going back to
But
Bethlehem?
why do I have to? I don't need to.
Because
that's just how it went.
That's how
people
historicity.
can move. I don't need to give you like
Sir, that's how
it's just possible.
historicity. That's how
But is it
historicity. Hey, why are you cutting me off? That's how history. It's not about being possible or not. It's about being plausible or not. That's how historicity works. For example, is it possible that Jesus was born was born as a girl, and then God transformed him into a male, a boy? Is it possible?
Is it possible Jesus was born as a girl?
Yeah.
Based on the text of scripture, no, but if God wanted to, okay.
Okay, so that's also possible. Is it plausible?
No, it's not plausible.
Oh, okay. Is it possible that Jesus went to India and studied with a bunch of Indian monks for a few years of his life and came back?
Could have been possible.
Oh, possible. Is it plausible though?
No.
Good. So exactly. So being possible is not the argument.
And I get your point here, but this is possible and plausible. I don't see how this is not.
Right. So can you
from the text of scripture able to happen? Because I told you that Bethlehem, they could have easily stayed in Bethlehem because he was born there.
Give me the plausibility for why Joseph is going back to Bethlehem.
Why he considered going back to Bethlehem, because he considered it. He didn't do it.
For what?
The plausibility.
For what?
He considered it because simply it could have been that his son was born there. That's the reason I give.
That's not a plausible reason. Who goes back? Who goes back somewhere that they were just visiting because my son was born there? I just want to go back there. Although that's a dangerous spot, and I'm not even from there. My home is not there. My belongings are not there. My work is not there. Joseph was a carpenter. He needs to work to make a living. My family is not there. I'm just going there for fun. Why is he going back there?
So he could have. Remember, I said he considered it. He turned it down because it was unsafe, right? So he considered it in the event that it was safe. He could have gone there. That's simply how it went.
For what?
Right?
For what?
Because it could easily be his son was born there. That's a possible explanation.
That's not plausible. It's not plausible.
I don't see how it isn't. I don't see how it isn't.
All right. Let's all right, Bible lover. All right. Let's say you and your wife, you go to let's say you go to Halifax. Okay. You go to Halifax, Nova Scotia, because you have to go meet for some migration officer, whatever, right? You need to sign some documents. That's the only reason you're going there. You have no other business there. Okay. Then when you get there, your wife gives birth in Halifax. Then Halifax is dangerous. You have to leave. Okay? You have to leave. It's dangerous for you. So you leave.
Right.
And now Halifax is not dangerous anymore.
Right.
What are you going back for? You already did the paper. You registered. You did what you had to do. Your son was born. He's healthy. The place was just dangerous. Now it's not dangerous anymore. Your home is in Toronto. You've been traveling all this time. Why are you going back to Halifax? For what?
I'm newly married. Me and my wife are looking to settle in a place, so we choose Halifax as a place to settle down.
You have a house in Toronto.
See, this is the thing, though. I don't believe that Joseph and Mary lived together in a single house. I'm saying they settled together in one place.
You have a home.
Joseph, the angel appeared to Joseph separately and Mary separately. They were in different areas when they moved together.
And then they came together, right?
They married together, so they're settling in a place together with their son, which could have easily been in Bethlehem, but
both Joseph and Mary, homes and relatives and family and work and lives and belongings are all there, right?
Cool.
What are they doing going back to Bethlehem?
Easily just settling together as a family. I don't see a problem with that.
Settling together. Just leaving everything behind?
The thing is, it's plausible. He just don't like it. It's plausible. It's definitely plausible.
Right? Okay, so it's not plausible. It's possible. It's not plausible.
It is plausible.
You're not giving an explanation, but we're going back and forth too much.
Yeah, because the Bible literally says that they're settling together. He chose to settle down in Nazareth with his family.
So they're coming from
different houses and they're settling down.
Yeah, this guy, because he was gonna go on Indeed and apply for a job, right? Sir, we're talking about
this
the
is all
first.
like this is all
Sir,
extra stuff that doesn't
we're
relate to
talking.
nothing.
No, it's not. We're talking about
This don't relate
first.
to nothing, my
We're
guy.
talking,
This don't relate to
sir.
nothing.
We're talking about first century Jerusalem,
Mm-hmm.
Palestine, first century
Mm-hmm.
Judea. You don't just
Right.
move somewhere. You don't just show up. Indeed, job near me. Go drop off a resume, and now you know you're good. You're making $1 now. That's not how it works. That's not how it works. Joseph was a carpenter. His life is established. He's in Nazareth. His family's there. Everybody's there. You can't just go to Bethlehem just to settle. New couple who this. It doesn't work that way, dude.